In this module, we shall discuss 4 types of research, namely quantitative research, qualitative research, conceptual research, and empirical research. Students, first we shall see what is quantitative research. Quantitative research is the systematic investigation of some observable phenomena through statistical, mathematical, or computational techniques. The main purpose of quantitative research is to develop and use models applying mathematical theories and hypotheses related to the research study. Measurement is an important aspect in this research. This connects the observation made and mathematical expressions. Data that is collected will be in numerical form like percentage. The data is subjected to statistical tests. Quantitative research is mainly used in psychology, economics, demography, sociology, community health, and human development. Qualitative research gives information about only selected cases studied, and other conclusions will remain as hypotheses. But quantitative research is used to identify the true hypothesis among them. Now, we shall discuss the scientific methods associated with quantitative research. Models, hypothesis, and theories generation, instruments development and measurement methods, control of experiments and manipulation of variables, empirical data collection, modeling and analysis of data. Quantitative research always goes hand in hand with qualitative research. While qualitative research helps in forming hypotheses, quantitative research is used to test these hypotheses. Quantitative research may involve the use of proxies as stand-ins for quantities that cannot be directly measured. An example is assessment of the quantity of a product to be manufactured even before the launch of the product in the market. This type of research helps in determining the relationship between independent and dependent variables before collection of data. Quantitative research may be either descriptive type or experimental type. A descriptive research establishes only the association among variables, whereas an experimental research reveals the causative effect. Now, what are the characteristics of a quantitative research? Data is gathered by use of structured research instruments. Results are based on larger sample size, that is true representation of the population. Research is replicated or repeated, which is highly reliable. The research objectives clearly address the research qualities. Design of the experiments are well planned. Data are in the form of numbers and statistics well represented in the form of tables, figures, and charts. Research is used to generalize the concepts. Future results are predicted. Research is used to find out the causal relationship. Questionnaires including computer software are used for data collection. When the quantitative research results are reported, it is essential to explain the method of data collection, to repeat the unexpected events, to explain the technique followed, to use appropriate statistical tools, and to declare any assumptions made. In case of inferential statistics, descriptive statistics has to be explained along with the confidential intervals, sample size, degrees of freedom, and significance level. We shall now see the sections of the report of quantitative research. The first part is introduction. Usually, this is written in past tense and from the third person point of view. This section will cover the details like problem identification, review of literature, description of theoretical framework. Next comes methodology. This gives the details of the study population, sampling technique, data collection, and data analysis. Then we have the results. Quantitative research collects data in numerical form. This can be put into categories or in rank order or measured in units of measurement. This type of data can be used to construct graphs and tables of raw data. Experiments give quantitative data which are concerned with measuring things. However, other research methods such as observations and questionnaires can produce both quantitative and qualitative information. For example, a rating scale or closed questions on a questionnaire may generate quantitative data, as these produce either numerical data or data that can be put into categories like yes, no answers. In open-ended questions, descriptive responses are obtained. Experimental methods limit the possible ways in which a research participant can react to and express appropriate social behavior. Findings are therefore likely to be context-bound and simply a reflection of the assumptions which the researcher brings to the investigation. Tables and figures exhibit the values obtained by processing the data by doing appropriate statistical analysis. Next part of the report is discussion. The results are subjected to comprehensive analysis with logical supportive statements of other researchers' findings. This part will be in present tense with description of trends of results, comparison of groups, relationship among variables, discussion on how the results helped fill the gap in the understanding of the research problem and limitations of the study. Finally, we have the concluding section. This part of the report gives the summary of the findings, policies, and recommendations for future research. There are many advantages of quantitative research: large sample size, accuracy of results, reproducibility of the results, can summarize vast information, comparison of groups is easy, and no personal bias. However, there are some limitations also. Contextual details may be missed. Sometimes results may reflect the views of the researcher rather than the participant. Results provide less details on behavior, attitude, and motivation. Sometimes data may be narrow and specific. As the research is done in an unusual and artificial environment, a control is required. Next, we shall discuss on qualitative research. This is primarily exploratory research. This type of research helps in understanding the basic reasons for the problem under study, opinions, and motivations. This research helps in developing hypotheses for quantitative research. Experiments and measurements do not contribute the data. In qualitative research, the objectives are elaborate description, whereas in quantitative research, the objectives are measured, data subjected to statistical analysis. As opposed to quantitative research, in qualitative research, the researcher is aware of only a rough idea of the data well in advance. However, the data in qualitative research is rich but time consuming. Also, the researcher is completely involved in the problem under study. Here, there are three main methods of data collection: interactive interviewing, written statements by the participants, and observation. There are two approaches to qualitative research. Funnel approach, in which the general research questions for data collection get narrower and narrower till conclusions are drawn. Induction approach, in which the specific narrow question gets broader and broader till conclusions are drawn. Triangulation is a new approach in qualitative research. In an example of qualitative research, if a survey is required about the performance of students in a particular subject, data is collected from multiple sources: the teachers, students, parents, and higher authorities, in multiple ways like interview and observation, and by collecting different types of data like assessing the students' records, observing the students, and interviewing the teachers. Characteristics of qualitative research are: the research is concerned with opinions, feelings, and experiences. It explains naturally occurring social problems. Theories and concepts can be developed with the collected data. Data is collected by direct contact, and there is no chance for manipulation of data. There are three key elements that define qualitative research. The first one is research design. Qualitative research should be naturalistic, that involves study of the real world, should be emergent, that involves skipping off rigid designs by the researcher in order to eliminate responding to opportunities to pursue new paths of discovery as they emerge, and also it should be purposeful where cases for study are selected as they are information risk. The second key element is data collection. This is by data observation, personal experience, empathic neutrality, and dynamic system. A good example of a qualitative research method would be use of unstructured and group interviews. This may generate qualitative data through the use of open questions. This allows the respondent to talk in some depth, expressing in their own words. This helps the researcher develop a natural environment with understanding of the situation. However, it can be time consuming to conduct the unstructured interview and analyze the qualitative data. The third key element is analysis of data. Qualitative research collects information that is not in numerical form. For example, open-ended questionnaires, unstructured interviews, and unstructured observations may yield qualitative data that is typically descriptive in nature and therefore difficult to analyze than quantitative data. The collected data are made known to everyone in the language of the informant. Now, let us see the advantages of qualitative research. More realistic view of the situation is got. It is possible to have direct interaction with the participants. Data collection, analysis of data, and interpretation of results can be done in a flexible way. Results reveal newer understanding of the problem. Interaction with participants is possible in their own setup and language. However, there are some limitations also. Deviation is possible from the original objective. Characteristics of the researcher may lead to arriving at different conclusions. Replication of the study may be difficult. Data collection and analysis are time consuming and expensive. Researchers should have rich experience. Data may be lacking in consistency and reliability. Now, let us move on to the third type of research, conceptual research. This is a type of scientific research, the other being empirical research. Conceptual research focuses on the theoretical aspects or the concept of the problem under study. In simple terms, it involves pen and paper. Without attempting any experiment, just with observations, research work is aimed at. Conceptual research makes use of brain and not the hands. Study on motion of planets and various causes for diseases are simple examples of conceptual research. This is also referred as analytical research. Conceptual research and empirical research are not mutually exclusive. Conceptual research is mainly used in social sciences and philosophy. Conceptual research is a link between different concepts, theories, and groups of ideas. The main aspect of conceptual research is observation, maybe of an individual or that of others, from where theories find their origin. For example, many of our ancient concepts about stellar constellations were established from observations of how Copernicus saw the universe. Many years later, his conceptual research was simplified by Galileo. The conceptual observations of Galileo later gave rise to a number of experimental research to prove or reject predictions made during that period. So another way to think of it would be to observe, come up with a concept or theories aligned with previous theories to derive new theories which may be empirically examined to assess the problem under study. The examples of conceptual skills depends upon the medium that they represent. Different events require different understanding. How you convey your understanding to others as well as yourself requires the ability of understanding the dynamics of the task in hand. The more complicated the task, the greater the dynamics. This is where the intelligence quota comes in. The higher the quota, the greater the ability for understanding and conveying that understanding to others. But even there, we have problems. This is because one can have greater ability towards understanding, but they don't have the aptitude for the subject. So you can teach a person about science, but he may never become a scientist because he lacks the aptitude for the work. Next type is empirical research. The term empirical was earlier referred to certain ancient Greek practitioners of medicine who rejected adherence to the dogmatic doctrines of the day, preferring instead to rely on the observation of phenomena as perceived in experience. Later, empiricism referred to a theory of knowledge in philosophy which is attached to the principle that knowledge arises from experience and evidence gathered mainly using the senses. In scientific use, the term empirical refers to the gathering of data using only evidence that is observable by the senses, or in some cases using calibrated scientific instruments. In empirical experiments, mainly in education research, the experiments are conducted by either one of the three types of designs: pre-experimental, experimental, and quasi-experimental. Empirical research makes use of empirical evidence. It is a way of gaining knowledge using direct and indirect observation or experience. Analysis may be qualitative or quantitative. Research design is likely to vary depending on the area of interest. Many researchers may prefer to combine both qualitative and quantitative forms of analysis. They depend on the data obtained by observation to formulate and test theories and to come to conclusions. The researcher assesses the interaction between the instrument and the phenomenon or the problem of interest. He or she calibrates the instrument used for measurement with the help of standards and recording the results before applying to the unknown objects. It is very essential in scientific studies to determine the validity of empirical research by analyzing the data using standardized statistical methods like t-test, ANOVA, regression, and chi-square test. Hypothesis testing is done and the proposed hypothesis is accepted or rejected. The empirical cycle includes observation, induction or formulation of hypothesis, deduction or formulation of experiments to test the hypothesis, testing, that is data collection and hypothesis testing, evaluation and interpretation of data. Two main types of empirical research are experimental research involving treatment or intervention used to bring a change in a series of variables, and non-experimental research where the participants are observed without any experimental intervention. Experimental research method involves experimental group and control group and is referred as true experimental research. Another type in non-experimental research where there is no random assignment of the participants into groups. Experimental research findings are published in scholarly journals and not in popular magazines. But if a research article appears in a peer-reviewed journal, it does not mean that it is an empirical research work. Some important characteristics of such articles are: they will be lengthy, there will be an abstract, bibliographic reference with inclusion of phrases like "in this study," "were administered," "assessed," and using the results. There are 7 criteria for empirical research. Number 1, samples should be randomly selected from the target population and subjected to treatment. There is possibility for achievement of internal validity. Analysis of covariance, ANCOVA, can be used for high precision of experimental studies. The second one, any extraneous factors which may be associated with variation in an outcome variable can be controlled by techniques such as selection, stratification, and statistical adjustment, or can be randomized. For example, if there are known socio-economic status (SES) differences on a dependent variable, the researcher can select cases within a relatively narrow range of SES so that its impact becomes negligible or at least lessened. The third criterion, it is preferred that outcomes and covariates be assessed with relatively little measurement error. Other things being equal, unreliability increases unexplained variation within groups and reduces the power of the analysis. The fourth, validity is an important factor that refers to the degree to which inferences can legitimately be made. Number 5, implementation of treatment variable is yet another important aspect. There must be some record or documentation supporting the fact that the intended treatment has taken place. 6. While there are often alternative analytical approaches that result in equivalent analysis with respect to interpretation of results, it is also the case that inappropriate analysis may limit interpretability. Number 7. While the use of inferential statistical methods has been a valuable tool in many applied research fields, their use has also led to some unfortunate opportunities to make incorrect or misleading interpretation of the results. Thus, in this module, we discussed 4 different types of research: quantitative, qualitative, conceptual, and empirical research, their definitions, explanation on them, their characteristics, and their merits and demerits.